Hello and welcome. In today's episode, we are going to be drawing this picture of Link in a forest, in a magical forest. So I've actually just finished, but I'm going to go ahead and rewind and we'll start from scratch. So I hope you enjoy. Please let me know in the comments if you have any suggestions for making my YouTube channel a little bit better, making the videos more enjoyable to watch. I don't expect you to watch the entire thing, but maybe you skip forward, whatever makes you happy. And hopefully you can learn something, because I kind of explain everything as what I'm doing as I'm going along. So enjoy. See you on the other side. In this episode, we're going to be doing Link from Legend of Zelda. He appears to be in the forest. And what I've done so far is I have already selected all of my markers for this picture. So for example, here I have my tray of, this is plants and flowers and vines. And I've got about a dozen of these trays. I actually made these trays myself, and they help me organize my markers. And the reason why I really like to pick my markers before I get started, well, there's a few different reasons. Number one is that time. A lot of times we're working with wet ink, and you want to be blending when that ink is wet. And so if I'm looking for the right marker, it can actually take time because I've got hundreds of markers, and basically what I'm looking for is I might be reading, oh, that's G7, and this one's G5, and it can take a while to actually find that. During that time, the ink could be drying on you. The second reason is that I've got all these different piles of markers, and I'm not going to reuse any of the same colors. So the greens that we're going to see in these leaves up here will be different from the greens from here, will be different from the greens in the background. So I've basically have all my green markers out. So what I want to do is I normally start with the background. But I don't really know how dark I want this background to be yet, but I want to start with something that isn't really gonna grab the user's attention. It's basically, I'm just getting warmed up. I'm basically just like kind of establishing the tone and maybe figuring out how much contrast there's going to be. So what I've done right now is I've selected these markers. These are green markers, and we're going to start with these leaves on the top. I actually tried this yesterday, and I wasn't really happy with how this turned out. So I did the top leaves, and I think I could do a little bit better. So I decided to just start over. But this will be our goal for this for the beginning. So when I start, I always start with the lightest color marker, and basically, when I'm doing this, I'm pretty much, my goal is just to get the paper wet right now. And with these highlighters, you're not really going to see the final color. Like, this is a pretty yellowish green, and you're just really not going to see it all that much. But it kind of like establishes a good base color for your marker, for your drawing. So these first 3 or 4 are just going to be my highlighter colors, and then probably what it'll end up looking like, it will be like this 5th green will be basically what it'll mostly look like, and then we've got these 2 darker greens for shading purposes. So I always want to keep my marker moving. Like, as soon as that ink hits the paper, it starts to dry. The clock is running, and we're going to be blending a lot of the inks together, but it's got to be wet. So now, if you're concerned about time and you like to go a little bit slower, sure, you can just do like a couple leaves at a time and then work your way over. I like to do it all at once. And the reason why I do that is for consistency purposes. If I do something on this leaf here, I want to do something similar on that leaf there. Similar amount of ink, similar amount of time, similar colors, similar everything. So I'm just kind of like throwing in some highlights here. And like I said, we're kind of mixing some colors together, and that's fine. Most of these colors are going to disappear by the end. I'm really just trying to get that paper wet right now, and most of these colors are going to disappear once we start applying the darker colors. But you end up, even though you only end up really seeing the darker colors towards the end of the drawing, it's really the lighter colors you use the most. In fact, I just had to replace a bunch of markers, and it's basically just all the light markers that kept running out on me, not the dark ones. So if you need some dark Ohuhu markers, PM me, and I probably got an extra set I'm not going to use. Yeah, maybe the first viewer of this video will get it in about 5 years after posting this because I realized no one's ever going to watch this. And this is good. Let me come back in with this yellow one. I like this yellow tint. And so now, since I've kind of gone over each leaf a little bit differently, each one will have like a slightly different color. So I want each leaf to be kind of its own thing, but they also have to go together. So they're all unique, but they're clearly part of the same, the same family tree or whatever you want to call it. Same family tree. Ha, get it? All right. So now my paper's wet. I can actually feel it, and that's good for blending. So let's get into. Tell you what, I'm gonna start with this this marker right here, because we can always go darker. And I'm basically just going to. This will be my new base, I think. I'm just gonna get close to the edge. I might want the tip to be kind of light, so I might not get straight all the way to the very edge of the leaf. But let's just come across, and a lot of it is just kind of working it. It's like a piece of clay. You're molding it together. You're not gonna just, like, if you're doing claymation or something and you're trying to mold like a person, you're not gonna put all your detail into the face, the nose, the mouth, and all that, and then completely leave the rest of the body completely undone. You're gonna do it all little bits and pieces and try to just kind of mold it all together at once, sort of. I don't know, maybe that was a bad analogy. Oh well. So, just getting the wet ink. Now what I'm gonna do here, so it's pretty wet towards the tips of these leaves, and I'm gonna take advantage of that. So whenever we go to a dark marker, we wanna come back to that lighter marker and use that as a blender. The light markers turn into blenders for us a lot. I'm still not sure how dark I wanna go with these leaves. But that's why I'm leaving the background blank right now. That's why I'm doing the background a little bit later, because I want to see how dark these leaves are going to be. All right, so let's come back to a lighter color. I'm going to go with this green, and I'm going to pull my marker from the wet dark ink into the lighter ink. Okay, so this will give me a nice little tip. And I realize that these videos are going to be really long. Like, this whole thing will probably take me about 3 hours. I'm not sure. So if you have any suggestions on how I can make these videos shorter or better, just let me know in the comments. I don't really know. I'm doing this for fun. Like, I don't expect to make money off of this. I do the coloring anyway, and I like teaching. And I thought it'd be fun to maybe try teaching how to color. I'm not an expert. I don't do it professionally. This is just a hobby for me. But it's just fun. It's relaxing. I've done a lot of drawings over the years, and I think I consider myself to be pretty good at it. But at this point, okay, that looks pretty nice. Let me come in with this yellow again. Really, again, the tips of these kind of yellow. It's like a yellowish green. I'm just calling it yellow, why not? Getting everything wet, just keeping it wet. I'm always moving the marker. Like, I don't want to get up and go to the bathroom because the ink will dry on me. Oh, another good thing to note right now is that you want to be aware of your surroundings. So this whole area, I plan on doing like a really dark green. So if I do something like that, that's totally fine. This is gonna, if I accidentally cross over, that's totally fine because I know I'm gonna come back in later. I like to start with the lighter colors, and you can make mistakes. All right, now I'm gonna come to this fifth marker, and we're gonna go even a little bit darker. Lots of layers. So yeah, I can feel the ink is wet on my right hand since I'm putting it in the right here. I bet you if I put my hand down, oh nope. Sometimes you end up getting ink all over the place. It gets on your hand, and then you put your hand somewhere else on the paper, and then that part of the paper can get kind of wet. You gotta be careful that you don't contaminate your drawings that way, because I've definitely done that before. Okay, so this ink is nice and wet right now. I'm not too worried about it drying up on me. So I think I might do this one, and then I'll fade it again with that previous marker. So you always want to go up to a darker marker and then revisit the lighter markers, and then revisit and then blend from the dark to the light. Oh yeah, that's looking pretty nice. I'm going quick. Like I said, these videos are gonna be long. But you know, the coloring process, it's a long process. And as far as art goes, this is pretty quick. I mean, if I were gonna do this thing in colored pencil, it would take 12 hours probably. Whereas this is probably gonna take me about 3 hours. Just kind of blending that previous marker I just did in with the ink that was previously there. All right, let's go to this marker. And this time I'm just going to kind of highlight these black lines that they have. Okay, I'm not even sure if I want to go to that really dark marker. I probably do. Maybe something like this. Because I want contrast. You really want to have a lot of contrast when you work with markers. Contrast is good. We can always go darker. Put a little shadow underneath this overlapping leaf. That looks pretty good. And like I said, we're barely seeing any of those initial colors that we put down. But you know what? It's a tool for me. Those lighter colors are a tool. They help me blend the darker colors together quite a lot. Because right now, the paper's so wet right now that when I'm putting this ink down, it's already kind of just dispersing, and it's gonna make it a lot easier to blend in a moment or two. I mean, it's practically blending itself because it's mixing in with that ink that's already there, and it's so wet. I love it. I talk a lot about wet ink on this channel. It's a big deal. Coloring with markers. Yeah, that looks pretty good. All right, I'm gonna come in with one of these lighter markers, and let's blend these. Let's blend the tips a little bit better. Right now I'm using the brush tip. So these markers have a brush tip and a chisel tip. The brush tip I use it probably 90% of the time. It is better for applying ink. It's better for mixing ink on the paper. It's just generally better. The chisel tip is a harder tip, and it's meant more for pushing ink, as they say. So if I wanted to, maybe I'll do a demonstration here. Actually, no, I'll do a demonstration later in the video. I don't think I need it right now. The chisel tip, you really have to push into the paper, and you're kind of pushing the ink out of the way, but the problem is you just gotta be careful that if you push too hard, you might end up damaging the paper. As far as the paper selection goes, I don't recommend using regular printer paper, which is 20-pound weight. I think it's a little bit too light. This paper that I'm using right now, I'm actually not sure, but I'm guessing it's around 50 or 60 pounds. And that seems to work pretty well. With a thicker paper, it just allows me to mix a little bit more. Gives me more time as far as drying goes, because I can apply more ink. So right now I'm just doing the darkest marker. Just getting some, not highlights, like reverse highlights almost. Just making everything else come out a little bit brighter. Okay. Some overlap, some overlap. I hope I'm not going too dark, because once you bring out the dark markers are kind of scary. Like once you go to the dark colors, you really can't get that much lighter. You can a little bit, but not much. So be conservative when you're applying the really dark markers, especially your darkest marker, because this is really just used for establishing contrast and making those bright colors pop a little bit more. Okay, you don't need a lot of your darkest marker. And I'll probably come in and try to blend this once more. And let's go with G2, which is this one right here. And we'll just come in, do a quick go over it. I'm not going to go all the way to the tip. I'm gonna try to work out some of those lines. Sometimes when you add like a new marker, you get a line. But we really don't want lines, we want to blend it. And I might do one more pass with one of my highlighter markers just to kind of bring everything back together. Let's do that. And you know what? Let's go with this yellowish one. I really like this color. Bring it all together. What's nice about alcohol markers, I'm not worried about contaminating the tip with a darker color if I'm mixing it into a darker color. It's not like those cheap Crayola markers that if you dip your yellow into a black, it's ruined forever. These ones you can just go right through it, and then you might have to brush it off a little bit on a blank piece of paper, but for the most part, not really. Oh, I hope I didn't carry too much black in here. And you know what? Let's do the blender marker. So the blender marker is basically just a highlighter, and this will just kind of lighten up certain areas. So I'm going to lighten up the tips a little bit. I think that will look nice. These blender markers, you got to be careful. They do tend to kind of streak a little bit. They act a little bit differently than normal ink does. So you kind of gotta, you can't just work one little area and then work your way out. You kind of gotta do it all together. And you can see this is just kind of lightening up the tips, establishing even more contrast compared to the that darkest marker we just applied. And this looks pretty good. I don't like this one. I think I put too much down. So you can always come back and make it darker again. I think that's pretty good. I'm going to call that good for the leaves. Okay, now we're going to do the bushes in the background. I'm not going to quite get to the true background yet. I've selected these colors right here. It's going to be more of a turquoise. It's going to have a little bit of turquoise mixed in, like a tiny bit of blue. I've selected 3 gray markers, which I might use, I might not. I probably won't use all of these. But what I'm going to do is, like, this is going to be a little bit tougher to blend everything. Because if I go like right here to right here, I can't blend from this area to this area because we got his boots in the way. So it's just gonna be a little tougher, but I gotta be careful because there's a lot of stuff going on. So what I'm just gonna do is I'm gonna take my time right now. I'm gonna grab like a highlighter color, and I'm basically just going to I'm just gonna use a highlighter color and establish where all my colors are in this thing, so I don't make a mistake later. So I'm gonna take a little bit more time. Just get everything in here. like I said, you want to be aware of your surroundings, and most of the other things in this are not going to have any sort of green in it, or at least not like a dark green or a dark blue. So I gotta be really careful not to go over the lines like I could do up here. This part could take a little bit longer. Something like this I might section off. I'm gonna try to do it all at once and we'll see how it turns out. But since I'm doing it all at once and it takes a little bit longer because we got all these little nooks and crannies, the ink will kind of dry on me. So the ink might behave a little bit differently than it did, say, for the leaves up here. These leaves are still drying, by the way. It's been a few minutes since I switched cameras. So I do like this. I do like this shade of blue, bluish greenish. Taking my time. I'm really looking forward to seeing how this one turns out. I think yeah, it's fun. Like when you're browsing for the picture to draw. I mean, I probably browsed through like hundreds of different drawings, color, line drawings, before I finally selected this one. And I'll be really picky. I'll go through and I'll look at I'll examine each little area and be like, I wonder how I could do that, or does this make sense? Will I be able to fade this color into that color? Is it too simple? Is it too difficult? Sometimes, you want to have like a certain amount of space. I can only get so much detail into the, in a certain area. I can only get so much detail. And I think that this is good. The lines aren't too far apart, but they're not too close together. Okay, so now I've got that base established. Let's do some more base colors. So I'll do kind of like, I'll do this where the darker colors are gonna be. And these colors are probably gonna be blended away by the end. But it's just good to have. Just good to have a good base layer. I'm still just getting the paper wet right now. Now since this is taking me a little bit longer, some of these areas have already dried. But you know what? That's not a bad thing. Slightly damp. We don't want the paper saturated anyway. We want it slightly damp. It kind of depends. But basically, if I am doing like two markers that are pretty close in color, I don't need it to be very wet. It's pretty easy to blend those together. But if I were going from like this green to like this, that's a pretty big jump. So I need more ink on the paper because I'm basically just stirring it together on the paper itself. This doesn't have to be perfect. Like, your attention is not going to be drawn to this area like at all. It's basically, and you're barely going to notice these bushes. So you don't need to put too much detail into these. But still, you don't want it to be monotone. You want it to come to life. It'll be kind of like these leaves up here. These leaves are okay. I probably could have done better. It was my second try after all, but there's always room for improvement. But a lot of this is just like working on the go, making changes as you go along. Like, you're gonna make mistakes. There's no question about that. And a lot of it is just like, what do you do with those mistakes? Like, how do you recover? And with wet ink makes everything a little bit more forgivable. So I'll put this here. I'm not even going to use these first two colors. I'm not even going to use. Alright, let's get into, let's go with this one. Yeah, that's a nice dark color. It's not too dark though. And we're going back. We're just kind of working the dark areas. I'll eventually work this back up to the light areas, but not quite yet. I don't think I want these. I think it's too bright right now. because I want this to be like a darker forest. I think I want the darker forest, and then we've got bright colors for the tunic, and that will make those bright colors of the tunic pop a little bit more. Because I don't want the attention to be on these bushes. Absolutely not. Oh yeah, that's looking nice. Come together. Dark. Make this dark right here. Oh yeah, that looks real nice. Man, that actually looks pretty good just as it is right now. But not good enough. Not for what I want. Alright, where did I grab this marker from? And what you can do is, like, if my markers get kind of mixed up, I can just grab another one and I can put it in a dark area and see what it looks like. Put it in an area that you don't really think people are going to see too much. Like, this one's really not making much of a difference. I don't know. Yeah, this one's pretty similar in tone to that previous marker I just did. So it's not making a huge difference. Let's come back in with a highlighter with that first color I did, and let's just try blending everything together. Is this the right color? Yeah. So I put this in this area. I know that area is going to end up being pretty dark by the end of this, so I'm not too worried about going over it, because that's going to be like a darker green when it's all said and done. So we'll come in through, keeping that ink wet. Now these markers right here, this marker, it's a thinner marker, so it doesn't have that brush tip that I like so much. So right now I'm using the chisel tip, which is okay for blending. It's not quite as good, but it is good at like pushing ink out of the way. So if you want to go from like a light, if you accidentally went too dark and you want to go a little bit lighter, I think the chisel tip the broad tip, which is what I'm using right now, is a good tool for that, because you're actually like kind of pushing some of that ink back out of the way. And now I can always go darker. Now I want to get the bushes in one go. I don't want to have to revisit them. But worst case scenario, if the ink's all dried up and I've done everything else and I realize, you know what, those bushes are a little bit too bright, I can always revisit them and go darker. But let's try to avoid that. Wet ink, wet ink. Alright, let's do some darker colors now. Let's try BG7. So whenever I add a new marker, I always want to go to like the darkest spot. Even a spot that I know, even if it's going to end up being darker than what I'm doing right there. Oh, this is pretty good. And we're just gradually working our way towards the darker markers. Okay. This might be the darkest I go. I don't know. I'm actually kind of liking the way this looks right now. And you know, like I said, working on an area that's not going to get a lot of attention, it's good practice for us, but also like once this green is down, it kind of helps you color in everything else, because you get a good, it's good to compare the colors that are right next to each other. So like when I'm doing the boots, I'll have a good idea of how bright those boots are actually going to be when it's all said and done. Whereas if I did the boots right now, I wouldn't really know. That looks pretty good. I think some areas are a little bit too light, so I'm going to come back to, what's this marker? This one? Yeah. So this is a middle of the road marker. We've already used this marker, I think. Oh, you know what? That might be a little bit too dark. Let me come to this. This is one of those highlighter colors. This is that second marker that I used. So I might just do a little bit of blending with this real quick. And let's hit the highlights one more time. Tell you what, I'm gonna use this green, this very first one. I haven't actually used this marker yet, but we'll try to hit some highlight areas here. And we're just kind of bringing the lights into the darks. I'm not going over the whole thing. I'm just kind of doing the lighter areas. And I'm using this chisel tip, which I'm actually kind of, like I said, you can kind of push the ink out of the way a little bit. So I'm blending. Now, you got to be careful that you're not contaminating your bright areas too much, which I might be doing a little bit. I think that's pretty good for the bushes. I am going to call that good for the bushes. Maybe if I come in with, let's see, this really dark green. How's that look? Alright, I'll do this really dark green real quick. This is my green gray. Grays are really good for shading. I try to avoid them if I don't like to use them that much. But they can be really good for adding that last level of darkness, just to get that extra little bit of contrast. Oh yeah. Yeah, no, this is a good choice actually. This gives a lot more contrast and depth to the bushes themselves. But I might have to come in with one of these other markers again. Dark, dark. That looks pretty good. Let me grab this green gray and just kind of work it into, just transition that really dark gray that I just used. Just transition it back into the light areas a little bit. Help fade it a tiny bit. I want to avoid any sort of lines. When you add a new marker, you oftentimes get like a little line, so you just want to blend those lines back in. Okay, I am going to call this good for the bushes. Okay, let's do the dirt now. So I've selected a few different colors. I don't think I'm going to use all of them, but I've basically gone from lightest to darkest. And I think what I'm going to do is use the second one and this fourth one as kind of my base colors. Then I'll use these two for the shadow, and actually the base might end up looking like this fifth color right here. I don't think I'm going to use the first and the third one, so I'm actually just going to take these markers and set them to the side. So let's get going with these light colors. I'm going to turn it sideways. I think it's a little bit easier for me to kind of go vertically instead of horizontally. And I'm basically just going to mix these two colors together that I've selected. So it'll be like a blend of the two different colors. Getting the paper wet. I always say getting the ink wet. Sounds silly. And we're gonna come over this with the darker color again. You know, it's very rare that you just do one layer and then call it a day. You always want to use at least two different colors. Get things mixed up a little bit. Alright, we'll try this color now. And like I said, we're going to go over this with the darker color. So these will make subtle changes in the final color of it. You know, having this mixture of these two different colors. I just don't want it to look flat. You know, it's a rough road. Maybe we've got some lines here. We can work with these lines, the darker areas behind these lines. Filling in any blanks. That's pretty good. Get a shadow underneath the foot. All right, let's come in with this color. I think this brown that I chose is a little bit too light. So hopefully these the dirt all doesn't appear to be the same color. I'm hoping with the mixture of the two different colors that I put on before, plus in some areas I put down a little bit thicker levels of ink, thinner levels of ink. We just don't want it to look monotone. Even just like small, subtle changes in the color, it makes a difference in the end. Like your attention's not gonna be drawn to the dirt path when you're looking at the final result, but you will subtly notice small changes in the color. If it were flat, you would know. You would notice. Okay. This looks pretty good. I apologize, I have to rotate the paper. It just makes it a little bit easier for me. And let's come back in with one of these colors. Fill in any light spots I'm going to try to tackle. Now we're just mixing it together. Oh yeah. Alright, now let's use the darkest marker and let's do some shadows underneath this foot. Maybe behind this dark line. It's kind of suggesting that there's like a little tiny mound thing going on. We'll come underneath this leaf. Maybe back behind the leaf a little bit. Maybe underneath the bushes. So it kind of dips down right before those bushes. Something like that. And let's try to blend that in. It's all looking pretty dark right now, so I'm gonna use one of those first two colors to kind of blend this in. Try to get rid of some of these lines. This is actually blending pretty well. You know what? I think I want it to pop a little bit more. So I'm gonna actually come back and use this color. Let me just double check out, make sure I have the right one. And this will bring some highlights in. Oh yeah, look at that. I'm just doing this like a little chaotically. Maybe bring some highlights to the top of the mounds. Establish some more contrast here. Oh yeah. Oops, wrong side. I like to use the brush side. And let me take a look like this. Get a better idea. That looks pretty good. Let me come back over some of the really dark areas again. Just here. Underneath the boot again. Very thin. With the darkest markers, you always want to keep it pretty thin. Because those dark markers, just a little bit goes a long way. You don't use a lot of the dark markers. Alright, I'd say that's pretty good for the dirt. But now, I'm looking at this, I'm like, is the dirt that much darker than the bushes? I can always make the bushes darker, I realize that. But I'm going to leave them as they are right now, since they're done. I'm going to go ahead and do this background. The background's definitely going to be darker than the bushes and the leaves. Maybe on similar level as the dirt. And we'll just see how it goes. And then if I need to come back and darken up these bushes, I can. But I'm going to save that to the very, very end. Because I want to know what that's going to look like in front of these boots and these leaves right here. So let's do the background next. Okay, so now I think I'm ready to do the background. I've selected these colors. I've got quite a few. I know I want it to be kind of the darkest part of the entire drawing. So I've got to kind of compare to these leaves up top and this kind of turquoise bushes at the bottom. I think, generally when I pick my markers, I usually pick more than I'm probably going to need. In this case, I picked a lot. I've got the greens here, but I've also got some green grays, and I've got some warm grays, which kind of have like a brownish tint to them. So I think I want to have it look like there are kind of some trees in the background. So what I'm actually going to do, I normally start with the lightest marker. I'm going to start with one of these green grays, probably this middle one, and just kind of like, I want it to look like a forest. So let's add basically what might be some trees, sort of. Just, yeah, I don't really have a game plan right now. I'm just kind of winging this as I'm going. Now, I talk a lot about working with wet ink and blurring things together, but this is a large surface area, this background. And by the time I work it all and come back, lots and bits of it will be kind of dry. So I'm not going to be able to blend quite as much unless I focus like on a certain area at first. You know, if I section it off and do different areas. But I really like trying to do it all. I like trying to do an entire section at once in one go. I think it's kind of easier as you're kind of like, oh, I'm going to make this change here and that change there and whatnot. And I just want to keep it just helps you keep the consistent steps throughout. I think that's really important. Because if I make a mistake, I kind of want to like commit to that mistake. Like if I screwed up, like right here, like let's say I just don't like this color. Well, I've already put this color down. I can't take it off. So I gotta work with that color. So even if I decided that this is a mistake that I just did this, shoot, like I'm committed to it. I can't get rid of it. So I'm just gonna keep going with it. And you know what? That just kind of happens. Yeah, I think this green gray is working pretty well. Gotta be careful not. I just kind of crossed over a little bit. I gotta be really careful not to do that. Especially with these darker colors, it can really contaminate a drawing. Yeah, I think this looks pretty nice. And then basically, like in the kind of the light areas, I'm probably going to want to have some sort of, you know, it's going to be much lighter, basically. Okay, so I'm just giving the illusion of some trees in the background. Maybe some branches here, another branch there. I don't know. Something like this. It's going to look like a web, almost. There's going to be like a lot of trees, a lot of branches. It's basically, I just want it to look almost like a web, sort of. A web of trees. Some darks. And this could take a while. If guys, I know no one's going to watch this, and I'm probably just talking to myself. But if you are watching, if you have any suggestions on how I can make these videos a little bit better, or shorter, or more entertaining, more educational, let me know in the comments below. I will read them. I will respond. Oh yeah, that looks good. I'm working my web. That looks pretty good. It's just gonna be dark. Everything is gonna be dark. Really dark. Oh yeah, this could come out nicely. Sorry, I'll move my left hand. Try to naturally just kind of want to put my left hand up there, and I realize I might be blocking your view, which I don't want, because then no one's really gonna watch my videos if I'm blocking the view. Gotta have some production value. Shoot, I went over a little bit right there, but oh well. Not a big deal. Yeah, I think this looks real good. See, I can't just commit to this one green, this green gray. I think I need to have some actual green in there with it. Oh, we're just giving off the illusion that there's some trees in the background here. Yeah, I'm just working with it. I don't know. I really don't know what it's gonna look like when it's all said and done. It might look like garbage. It might. Got a branch coming up here. Let's go ahead and keep that going. So I got a web. It looks like a web. A little bit. Okay. I think the changes are going to be kind of subtle. Like I'm going to have this all kind of come together towards the end. But you can see, like when I'm applying ink, the ink gets lighter as it dries. So when I'm looking around this, the color isn't all the same. So the lighter areas are the drier areas. And I might just revisit some of them just a little bit, keep it wet. I don't know. I'm thinking right now, but like as I'm thinking, I keep applying ink because I'm just trying to keep everything wet as much as I can. I think more ink is generally better. And these lighter colors, you typically go through those pretty quickly. Okay, that's pretty good for that. Let me... What happens if I add this green gray? Is this one darker? Okay, let's make these a little bit darker towards the center of the... Because basically it's going to be a lighter background. It might kind of look like there's kind of some light coming out of the... from the background, even behind these trees. So I'm just gonna make kind of like the base of these things a little bit darker. And I'm leaving like, I'm kind of just doing the center of the tree right now. I'm not really doing like the edges of the tree because I kind of wanted to have like that appearance that it's more light coming from the back. But my light source for Link is gonna be in the front. So there's gonna be subtle differences between these white areas and the trees and stuff. I don't know. We'll just see what we can do with it. Now I had grabbed these two really dark markers, and I don't know if I'm actually going to need them or not. And I don't even know if I'm going to use the warm grays, because the warm grays kind of give like a brownish tint to them. But I don't know if that's what I need. I can come back and add those later, but I think for right now I'm just going to stick to my greens. So these are green grays. Kind of working it all together. There we go. I haven't really practiced this part, just kind of winging it. That's fine. Okay. I think that's enough of the green grays for now. Oops, missed a couple right here.
Connor?
Yes?
You got the receipt, honey?
It would have been in one of the bags,
Okay.
if anything. Okay, sorry I got interrupted there. Okay, let's do this third green right here. It's deep olive. Now these colors here, these markers, I have to use the broad tip. They don't have a brush tip. And so it's not as great for blending. But I'm going to go over everything with this marker. So this could take a while. But you can see I got some light areas, I got some dark areas already. Some of this ink might be dry, but that's okay. You know, sometimes you want to work with dry ink. And actually that could look pretty good for this. What I might do is actually kind of do this in sections. You know what? Let's do that. Let's kind of break this off into sections a little bit because I do want to work with this wet ink while I have it. So let's just do kind of like here and to the left. So I missed a spot. Yep, takes a while. I might even just fast forward through this part. I don't know. Maybe I'll do one section with you, and then I'll do the other sections by myself, and just kind of like show you what I'm doing. I don't know. This video is just gonna be so long. Like, there's no way in hell anyone's gonna watch it. Alright. Oops, dropped my cap. So I put down the ink a little bit unevenly on purpose. And what I'm going to do is some of these lighter areas, maybe tackle them with like a different marker. So I was just using this third marker, which I'll put back. And let's try, you know what, let's try this yellowish one, this very first one. And let's just kind of like pick and choose a couple different areas that I just went over. I'm not going to do everything with this marker. I'm just trying to establish some light changes. And then let's grab this one and do the same thing. Yeah, that looks good. So I'll revisit. So I'll tell you what, I'm just going to focus on these three markers right now. And yeah, I'm going to have to section this off. There's just too much surface area to work with. The ink is going to dry on me. So some really dark areas, some really light areas. Some areas I'm pushing really hard, some areas I'm just briefly going to go over. Because I'm going to fill in these whites, these lighter, shoot, I just went over again. I'm going to fill in some of these lighter spots with those other two markers in a little bit. So some areas I want to have like really wet, some areas I want to just barely go over at all. Okay, so I'm working my way up towards these leaves at the top. Now I want my background to be darker than these leaves. And I'm not sure if we're achieving that right now, but at least it's a different color. At least it's like obviously two different things. Alright, let's come in with these yellowish one. Oh yeah, I like that. It just has to be a different color, and that's one of the reasons why I pick my palettes beforehand, and I know which colors I'm going to be using for which sections, and I'm not repeating any of the same colors. It might be very similar, but I'm not repeating them. Yeah, I think I really like this yellowish color. Let's come back to this one. Now the background, I mean, it's just a background. It's not going to draw any attention to, no one's really going to look at the background. It's just going to be kind of there to complement everything else in the foreground. But it's important that it's not just one solid color that kind of looks like a forest. I think this looks like a forest. Alright, let's go back to my initial marker. Light in some areas, dark in others. Saturated in some areas, less saturated in others. So here I'm kind of like puddling it in this area. I might go kind of light right here. Come down. For what?
Clean my, suggest to clean the port, charging port. That might be dirty and you can use compressed air.
Yeah, give me 2 minutes.
Sure.
Okay, sorry for that distraction. I'm gonna have to turn off the camera here in a second. So just revisiting that like yellowish color. I'm not doing everything with the yellowish color. I want it to be kind of spotty. And I don't want the yellow color by itself. Like right here, there's like a touch of that yellow color by itself. I don't want that. So mixing it up with these other two colors. Just working with the wet ink, kind of blending things together a little bit. Because things are in the background, so it's going to be kind of blurry almost. I don't want too much of that yellowish color sticking out. Oh yeah. I can really kind of see the illusion of trees in the background. Like, I think this dark gray that I added is really adding a lot to the picture. In fact, you know what? I'm going to add a branch right here. And let's go GG5. I really like this dark in the back. Oh yeah. Pretty good. Okay, I am back. All right, let's go in with my green now. Again, dark in some areas, lighter in others. I can always revisit this marker. So very heavy, saturated certain sections. Like right here, I'm just gonna put the green down like crazy, but here it'll be kind of light. Still going over pretty much everything. I'm probably covering 95% of the area. But I'm not doing one nice big even layer. I want this to look kind of spotty. Just like be able to fade it all in and stuff. And let's come back to my yellow marker, which I would love so much. Oh, there's a dark spot. Shoot. Over again. Oh, shoot, I spilled something. Looks like my paper got damaged a little bit. Okay, and let's come in with this third marker. I hope you can see that all right. I'm using my isometric camera at an angle. Let me know what you think about the camera angle. And I can always adjust it. I can always move it. Oh yeah, that looks nice. Okay, let's go. Let's do the next section. Come up here, get these. I always miss some of these little nooks and crannies, like the really tiny areas where there's a background. It's so easy to accidentally put the wrong color, like assume that that's part of the wrong section or something like that. So you can see I'm not even covering everything. I'm gonna go really dark, like right here, like a lot of ink, but then like very little ink over here. A lot of ink right here, a little bit of ink right here. A lot of ink right here, and moderate amount right here. Oh, there's a couple areas I completely missed right here. Oh my gosh, that's part of that leaf. Okay, so I messed that up, but fortunately we can save that. I think we can save that later. That will probably just be part of that leaf, and that leaf will probably be a similar color to this, because I selected green yellows for that. Yeah, grab this. Work this color in sporadically a little bit. I don't want one solid color. I want this to be kind of, well, I want it to look like this. I'll grab my third marker. So I'm making sure, even though I've kind of sectioned this off, I'm making sure that I'm following the same steps the whole way through. Basically, because I want it to be consistent. I want everything to look like I did it all together at the same time. If I follow a different set of steps, even if it's a slightly different set of steps, it might be noticeable. You might say, oh, why does this half of the picture look different from that half? Like, what did you do differently here? Oh yeah, this looks so good. And I think I want some like green gray in this area right here. Make it a little bit darker. Let's see what the GG9 looks like. How dark that is. Oh, that's pretty dark. Okay. I put that on wet ink on purpose, and now I'm just going to try to blend it away. I think that was a little bit too dark. But you can still see a little bit of it, and that's actually kind of what I wanted. Okay. Let's come back to my original green. You know the drill. Alright, so put this down sporadically. Puddle it up in certain sections, very lightly in others. Keep some spots blank on purpose. A lot of ink right here, why not? Puddle it up right here. Okay, lightly go over it right here. Maybe just lightly right here. We can always revisit this. Grab my greenish yellowish one. I'm just going to fill in some of the blanks. Not doing everything with this color, because this color really makes it, really stands out a lot. Like, this color is going to, I don't want to say dominate, but it's going to stand out. Yeah, you know what, it's always good to look back. Like, this ink is mostly dry, it's still a little bit wet, but it's good to kind of come back and see what things look like, because you can see that this looks different from this, slightly. Again, this is my third marker, and just kind of sporadic again. Oh yeah, I think that looks really good. I think I'm going to call that good for the background. You know what, this area is kind of light, so I'm going to add another, let's see if we can add another tree here, kind of emphasize these trees that I kind of put in there initially. And we could do layers of trees. Okay, so let's try that and this. And then let's go over it with this marker again. back. Got my yellowish one. And then grab that third one. So I grabbed all these markers. I grabbed all these markers. I barely even used any of them. But you know, it's just good to have them ready to go. I really don't want to have to be digging and trying to searching for the right marker while I'm in the middle of drawing, just because I mean it takes time, and during that time the ink can dry on you, so you really want to avoid that. I think that looks pretty good. It looks like a forest to me. Let's take a look. I think that looks pretty nice. I don't know about you, but I'm going to stick with that. We'll call that good for the background. Okay, now let's do the vines and these plants. So I've selected these colors here. You might be wondering why I have some of these bluish colors. And what I'm going to do is kind of for these flowers, I'm not really sure what colors they are, and you know, it's Zelda, so the flowers can be any color really. It's supposed to be a magic rainforest. So let's go ahead and I'm going to start with these. I'm just calling them flowers. Why not? And I'm going to do kind of these lighter blues. Not really sure what it's going to look like, but as usual, I'm going to start light and end dark. So let's do the insides of these. Okay, so basically the minimum number of colors that I want whenever I am coloring like anything, even this is a pretty small section, I still want to try to use at least 2 colors, otherwise it will just be really flat, and I do not want flat. So I'm just going to get this wet. What's nice about working with these small areas is that like the ink isn't going to dry up on you. I'm not really worried about time too much. So just applying a little extra ink. And then let's go to this darker blue. So it'll be kind of like a darker blue on the inside. Yes, that looks nice. Come back, fade it in. Just use that first marker to fade the darker markers now. Okay, I'm just pulling that dark ink up. And that's going to give me a nice fade. Let's go back to the dark marker. So I usually like to visit each marker at least twice. Even on something as simple as this. You go light, really dark. And sometimes light again. I don't really like this fade. Okay, that looks pretty good. All right, let's try. Okay, I'm gonna try this one with this one. So it'll be this color and this color. Let's start with the lightest one. Now, if I don't like this, I can always go over with a different color. I can always change the color as long as that ink is wet. I can change the color to a similar tone. Or if the ink is dry, I can always change the color to a darker color of any choice, pretty much. Okay. Looks pretty good. You know what? I probably should have let these bluish colors dry a little bit so they don't bleed across the line. But I'm just going to be a little careful. I'm not applying a ton of ink. When you apply a ton of ink, it does kind of spread out, and you can get some blurring, some bleeding. But you know, I've done this a fair amount, so I'm usually pretty good about it. All right, let's come in with this darker color. That looks pretty good. I think I might want it to be even a little bit darker. That looks good. All right, let's go a little bit darker. Let's grab this color. And we'll just come around on the inside. So it'll be darker on the inside of the flower and lighter towards the outside. And we'll come back in and we'll fade it all together with the lightest marker. The lightest marker, again, just becomes kind of like your blending tool. I'll go from the light to the dark. Now, I don't want to go crazy right now. If I go crazy with it, it will all become the same color again, especially because these colors are fairly similar. So I'm just going basically one streak from the dark area to the light area, and that will just bring it all kind of together a little bit. I think that looks pretty good. If I don't like it later, I can always come back and make it darker. But I think that will call that good for these colors. I don't need these blue ones anymore, so I will set these to the side. Now let's see, the question is, do I want to have the vines and these leaves being the same color? I gotta be careful because the background. Now the background, even though I selected all different colors at the very beginning, all these colors that I selected are kind of like a yellowish greenish. And when we did the background, we kind of combined yellows and greens a little bit. So it could be a similar color. I think I'm gonna start with the vines. And I'm gonna just kind of randomly throw down these two colors. And just kind of random. Okay. It's just, most of these colors will be blocked up, will be covered up by the end. But again, always just kind of get my paper wet, get myself something to work with. I might go really saturated in some areas with this, and I might leave some areas completely white. So I'm kind of, it'll help establish different colors later, because I just want to avoid being monotone. So a lot of ink right here, maybe a touch of ink right here. Come back. I put a lot of ink in this certain area. Okay, that's good. Let's go to, shoot. You know what? Let's try this first color. So I think this will probably be my base, maybe. Let's see what this looks like when I combine them. You know what? I don't think I like that color very much, but I'm just gonna, since I've already committed to this, I've made this mistake that I don't like this color, but I gotta commit to it. I've already put it down on paper, so I'm just gonna kind of blend it in randomly, like I did with those previous colors. So just a little bit here and there. Okay, I'm gonna come to this. It's called GY5. This color right here. And I think this will be my base. So let's go ahead and mix this all in. So it's my base. So I'm doing the whole thing with this color now. But it shouldn't appear monotone. It should appear to changing color. And you can see, like right here, this is where I really heavily saturated with that yellowish color, and it still appears pretty yellow. But like up here, I didn't really put down as much of that yellow, so it appears darker. It appears more like this color that I'm adding right now. And with every layer, I'm getting that paper slightly more wet. So at first, like when I'm first putting down the colors, I'm thinking about having a variety in colors. So I'm actually going to come back and maybe try this one, certain areas. I'm just adding a variety of colors. The paper's plenty wet right now, so I'm not worried about that. What I am a little bit worried about is this color being too similar to the background colors. And that's kind of what I'm getting right now. So let's actually let's add in some shadows. Let's go GY8. So I'll have my light kind of coming from the upper right. So there'll be a dark shadow kind of on the left side of this. And maybe in these cross things too. And you know what, I think it's going to be okay if it kind of blends in with the background, because I mean they are vines and they are actually kind of in the background a little bit. So they're not really going to be, they're not going to draw much attention to you. Like they're not going to capture your attention. They're just going to kind of add to the background. And I don't want them to stick out too much. They're just vines. You know, the thing I want to stick out is Link. So you always kind of have to keep in mind, like, how much detail do I really need in this section? I mean, sure, I could go crazy, but is like anyone actually going to notice it? I don't even know. That's pretty good there. Let's even step it up one more time to a darker green. Put some green behind, put some shadow behind this leaf. Oh yeah, that's, I think that's the color I'm looking for right there. It's that previous color. I mean, you want to go darker in steps. You don't want to go from your lightest to your darkest right away. And yeah, I think that looks really nice. Let's add some shadow behind this leaf up here. Just hugging along the outside edge. Okay. That looks pretty nice. I'm going to come in with a light color. I think it deserves more highlights. So what I'm going to do is use the broad end, not the brush tip, because the brush tip is going to kind of mix it together. But the broad end is that chisel tip, otherwise known as a chisel tip, and it's basically going to push the ink away. So this will really help dominate and highlight certain areas of it. Okay. Really pushing. I'm not pushing super hard because I might damage the paper. But you'll notice a big difference when this is done. And the last steps are the most important. Like towards the end, yeah, you might be, oh, I've been working on this section for a while, getting a little burnt out. But this last section is when you're adding the darkest colors, and those darkest colors stick out the most. So you gotta be a little bit more, pay a little more attention towards the end. You know, at first I'm just trying to mix up the colors, get the paper wet, try to establish some different colors. But right now I'm thinking, you know, this is the final result. This is what you're gonna end up really seeing. These highlights are gonna stick out quite a bit, and they don't take me long to do. So I want to make sure that I do them right. I think that's pretty good for the vines. Good variety in color. All right, let's do something similar for these leaves and everything. So I've mixed up all my markers. I'm not really sure the order. Let's see. I had G300, G3. Oh, you know what? I have these kind of in order here. GY2. See, they've got labels. Here's GY2, GY5, and then my yellows. So I think I might go for a similar color. I mean, after all, I did select the same palette for these guys here. So we're just going to do something very similar. We'll just target the same colors. Kind of, I like this yellowish, greenish. Just getting everything started with this light yellow color. Now keep in mind, like when we did the vines, we started with this color. So look at the difference between this and this. This is the starting, and this is the finishing result. It's totally different. So right now, I mean, I'm just getting the paper wet, so it's like I'm creating like a tool for myself, like a blending tool. Kind of dark, more saturated in some areas, just kind of randomly. Some areas I'm leaving blank on purpose. And this will be just, like I said, I'm just mixing the colors together right now. And just getting some sort of kind of gradient, just making sure that not everything's monotone. Really don't want to be monotone. Okay. Nothing in nature is one perfect color. There's going to be some varieties, even just in the natural pigment of the plantation or in the shadows, the light, the way it reflects. But unless it's completely flat and in like some white room, the colors are going to change on you. And we want to capture that. Really heavy right here, why not? Alright, let's go to this other yellowish color. Now this is more of a greenish one. Same thing. Certain areas will get more ink than others. Some areas won't get any. I might leave a couple white spots still. Oh yeah. But I'm going to try to fill in most of the blanks. You know, this should be fun for you. Like, Am I trying to be the next Bob Ross? I don't know, maybe. That would be sweet. I love Bob Ross. Who doesn't? But these are kind of meant to be instructional videos. I mean, yeah, maybe they're fun to sit back and watch and relax. Hopefully I have a calming voice. I'm not really sure. But, you know, whether you're trying to follow along and do it yourself, just enjoying the show, it'd be kind of cool to just kind of fast forward a little bit and kind of see how this all comes together. See how the color changes over time. Just mixing these together randomly. Oh yeah. Oh, I always hold the cap like that. Alright, that's pretty good for this one, this G80. Let's go to GY4, so this third one here. So we just used these two colors. I'm gonna go GY4 because that's kind of my next lightest one, and I'm gonna do kind of the same thing. And I'm gonna fill in all the blanks now. I want pretty much everything to be wet at this point. Filling in the blanks, getting everything nice and wet. Covering up some spots, changing the colors in certain areas that I've already gone over. So I'm still going over some of those wet areas. Okay, that looks pretty good. Covering this spot, covering in here. Now, if I get it too wet, everything can kind of blur together. And it does, you know, there's a certain level of fade that you want to get. And right now the paper is getting pretty wet. Relatively small surface area. And I think the final color, we're just going to keep gradually getting a little darker and darker. But I think my final target is going to be more of these darker greens. I certainly don't like the color it's at right now. It's definitely too light. So let's come to GY5. Let's do this color, and we'll do this. I'll start to highlight the darker areas. So the darker areas will be like on the inside towards the stem of the leaf. And kind of following these black lines that they have, it'll be a little bit darker towards those. And this will all kind of be blended together towards the end. Maybe a little bit on these stems. I'm not trying to go straight for the dark colors, okay? Like, I'm building up to it. If I try to go straight to the final result, it will never look good. I'll never get a good blend or anything like that. Like, I'm still kind of, I'm molding this thing. I'm not going straight for the end. I'm molding it all together. That's pretty good. A little randomness is good. Everything's just gradually getting darker. We're just stepping up to it. Chances are I'm probably going to come back with the same marker and go over everything. But not yet. Not yet. There is an order, a pecking order. Okay. Same thing up here. Create some shadows. I'm just gradually bringing out those darker areas. So this whole thing, everything's going to get darker than this. Just kind of gradually bringing out those darker colors. Let's step it up one more. Let's go one step darker. We're just working these dark areas. Now we're starting to get some contrast going. sure about this. Let's see, this might be all pretty dark. My light will, on these little cross-section things, bring those up. Shadow under here, shadow on the outside, because my light source is to my right. Okay, I haven't gone over this leaf yet. I think this is coming out nicely. Dark, shadow, and that's a life. Shadow underneath. Okay. Just a little bit darker towards the bottom here. And shadow. Oops, looks like I have the shadow going underneath here. So I've already kind of established some shadows a little bit, or some shade, whatever you want to call it, dark areas. I'm just kind of building off of what I had before. It's almost like I did a rough draft with those lighter colors, and now I'm doing the final draft. And this isn't even the final draft yet. Who are we kidding? This is like the mid-draft. Because I have not even gone... This is the second darkest marker that I might use. Maybe... no. This is... this marker. Okay, that looks pretty good. Let's go with... Wait, what's this one? I might mix up my markers here a little bit. Alright, this one's even darker. Excellent. So now I'm being a little bit more careful because these dark colors are much less forgiving. Yeah, I might have too much contrast on this one. There might be a little too much of a difference. But we're going to, I think what I'll do in my next step is take a step back, go to a lighter color, and try to blur things together a little bit more. See if I can get some better fades going. Get a little shadow here. I just don't want it to be darker than the background. That's kind of my biggest fear right now, is I don't want the foreground to be darker than the background. Generally speaking, like the average foreground should be darker than the average background. So certain parts can be darker, certain parts can be lighter. Oh, man. This leaf will have some shadow to it. All right, now let's go to a lighter color. Let's grab, you know what? Let's make these more green. So I'm gonna grab these two colors. I think that's this color, and then this color. These ones are pretty similar, so I'm gonna go with this light color that I just did, and I'm actually gonna go over everything, I think. So I'm kind of blending it together a little bit. Generally, you want to go from the dark areas to the light areas. But I'm not too worried right now. Still got a ways to go. Right now, like a leaf is never going to look like that. A leaf might look more like this. So this kind of blending everything together, but not like bringing everything together completely, just a moderate amount. Okay. So by the end of this thing, I probably, like, each part will probably have had, I don't know, probably between like 6 and 10 layers of ink. Maybe even more for certain areas. But I can tell that ink is still pretty wet. Yeah, look how much nicer these ones look than these ones. Although I am kind of missing some of that yellow, so I might go back with the yellowish ones and kind of do the highlight areas, kind of like I did for the vines. Make those yellows pop a little bit more. See, if you mix the colors together too much, you get mud. You get like an icky. We don't want icky. Gosh, it's getting close to that background color. I'm not a fan of that. I don't like that. It's just, it's getting so close to what the background looks like. Alright, let's go on with my highlighter yellow again. I'm going to use the broad end, and we'll just kind of go over some of these highlight areas. Try to line things up in some areas. Make the yellow pop a little bit more. Still kind of blending. I'm not blending everything. I'm just kind of focusing on the lighter areas. But I'm kind of blending together the lighter areas. But I'm highlighting it. I'm using this, the chisel tip, and I'm really kind of pushing and digging into the paper. And it's actually kind of pushing away some of the darker colors. You can like what we're doing right now is we're going lighter. We're making ink actually lighter, which is hard to do. You can only really do it if the ink is wet, and there's a lot of it. But you have to apply a lot more of the lighter colors to make a difference compared to a dark marker. I mean, if I added like a really dark green, I would only need a drop of ink. But for this, I need to really push. That's why I always run out of my light color markers well before I run out of my dark markers. And then you end up replacing the set just to replace a handful of the light markers. Then you end up, like, once you've replaced your set a few times, you end up with a bunch of dark markers that you maybe never even used. There are some colors that I have like 3 or 4 of, and I'm just like probably never going to use those. That looks okay. I wonder what it would look like if I went even darker. So I'm just going to come to some of the the areas that I know are going to be really dark and go over with this green. And we're just experimenting a little bit right now. Oh, you know what? There's a spot that I missed in the background. So I'm going to grab Green Grade 5 and just go over this real quick. Okay, so I just grabbed this from my markers for the, this is my background. So even though I've already done the background, I don't put the markers away because sometimes I need to come and revisit those markers. And it's just easier to keep them together, like I just did. These leaves are getting pretty dark. They're mixing in with the background a little too much. And then this green doesn't really go with this kind of bluish turquoise color. But you know what, we're still gonna, like, even though I'm not totally satisfied with this so far, we're still gonna finish, because it might end up looking better than we think. We might be able to change the colors a little bit. Yeah, but, jeez. It's tough to get the colors right. No, it's not always going to be a winner. And just adding more contrast here. I mean, I can't make the lights lighter, but I can make the darks darker. So you can pretty much always add a little bit more contrast, assuming everything isn't totally pitch black. Just add some shadow here. Even on the tiny little stems, a little shadow goes a long way. And all you really need is just like one line. And since the ink is kind of wet, it'll blur a little bit, and that's exactly what I want. That's pretty good. I might blur this one a little bit more. Let's come in with just a lighter marker. I just grabbed a lighter marker. I didn't really care which one it was, just as long as it's lighter. I'm just kind of blending these together. Alright, I'm going to call that good for these leaves and the vines. Okay, so now I'm ready for the wand. I've gone ahead and selected these colors right here. Basically, we've got some kind of purplish, bluish for these doohickeys here. And then I'm going to make the rest of the wand kind of like a goldish color. I selected this bright yellow, but I don't think we're going to go quite that bright. But we'll see how it goes. I think I'm going to start with these two guys because I think these are going to be a little bit easier. And it's this fairly small area, so these might be kind of monotone. They look like flat objects, so these might be a little bit flatter than I would normally go. But I might put a little... I might do something around the edge a little bit. Let's try... Shoot. I'm not even sure what colors I want. Alright, let's go with this R24. And I'll make this R24. And what I might do is try to make it look a little like as rounded edges. So I'll put a little shadow around the edges with that next darkest marker. But right now, just do my base color. Okay, just being careful. Not pushing too hard. Okay, that's good. Let's come to R25, which is the next darkest color. And you know what, let's just kind of do the edge here. Let's just give it a little bit of depth to it. Let's do another pass. You know what, these colors are pretty similar. So I'm not really noticing a big difference. But I just put down a couple layers. So now I'm going to come to this really dark one. And let's do a very thin layer around the edge. And then I'll try to blur that in. Oh jeez, this is really dark. Okay, so right now I admitted I've made a mistake, I think. I think I went a little too dark, but I have to commit to it. Okay? But I knew I was taking a risk by applying this darker marker, but I did it into wet ink, so I know that I can, at the very least, I can blur this a little bit. And that's what I'm going to try to do right now, is just blur it. Reestablish that previous color. Just blur it all together. Yeah, that's... Try to work that line out, that edge line. But yeah, now, you know what, actually it's looking pretty good. Now it's popping a little bit more. So it wasn't necessarily a mistake. It just wasn't good the way that it was. I couldn't leave it that way. I just had to work with it. But I'm working in wet ink. You can see I've actually put a lot of ink down on the border here, and it's starting to cross over this line. So I'm going to stop on this thing. I think that one actually looks pretty good. And I'm going to come over to this. For this, I selected... I think I might need another color, but let's do the outside of this thing. I'm going to go with this light purple. And we'll just do the outside of it. And then I might dig in, and I just don't know what other color I would add there. Maybe a color that you won't really see anywhere else on this. Maybe like an orange. Or orange stick out a little too much, I don't know. Well, maybe not, because this will be gold. What goes with purple? I don't know. Maybe like a light blue. Okay, there's that. Do the same thing with the edges here with this next darkest marker. Just give it the illusion of being rounded. Actually, I'm going to have the whole backside be that darker color. Okay, get rid of this line, so I'll come back in with that lightest marker. blur it together a little bit. It has a nice depth to it. You know, I should just randomly grab a marker and select it at random. Now, if I do red, the whole thing is going to stick out quite a bit. I don't want to do green because everything else is green. I'm kind of feeling like an orangish color. How about not super bright? So here's my palette. I actually made I custom made these. Let me know if you're interested in these. I can put PDFs online, but I'm not really sure if that's necessary at this point. I'm just going to kind of randomly pick an orange one. Alright, I picked an orange one kind of at random here. Let's just see what this looks like. I don't think it matters too much. I mean, it really could be any color. This is it's not a natural object. It's not really going with anything else in the drawing. And we can always make it a little bit darker. So that's kind of cool. It's a little monotone, so I'm going to grab a darker orange. Maybe even, let me try YR5. I got that right here. So I keep my markers close. I keep them well organized so I don't waste a lot of time digging through my marker collection to try to find the right one. That's just what I don't want, because that way the ink is drying while you're looking. And you know, this is a time-consuming process, and you just want to be well organized and plan ahead. So I put that darker color in. I've got some lines, so I'm going to try to blur out those lines now with the original orange. Oh yeah, that looks real nice. You know, I'm curious. Let's see what happens if I add this yellow right here, right into the middle. I might make it pop a little bit more. Brighten it up. Oh yeah, that looks nice. Okay, whatever that is, I'm going to call that good. I'll put these two markers away, keep my yellow one out. I'm going to start with the same yellow, and we'll just do some highlight sections here. I'm not going to spend too much time on this yellow. I'm going to saturate this area, because this will be my brightest spot. And maybe bright here at the top too. But I'm not spending too much time with that color. You know what, I'm going to skip. I'm going to go straight to Y2, I think. It's my third color. Start doing the darker areas. I put this away. Darker areas. Ball shape. Got shadow here behind this doohickey as I like to call it. You know, let's just do the whole thing. Let me know about the camera angle. Like, the paper's starting to warp a little bit, so I'm wondering if that's affecting your angle at all. You can always readjust the cameras. That's actually a pretty nice color, I would say. So this would be a good base color. I'm gonna go back to that bright yellow and try to work this highlight area just a little bit more. So basically, I'm not changing the color too much when I'm adding this yellow, but by adding more ink, I'm kind of locking down this color a little bit more. So when I come in and add a darker color later, the darker color won't have as strong as an effect as it will in like this area right here, which I haven't gone over with this bright yellow. Alright, let's go, you know, let's do this fifth color here, and I'm going to start applying some shadows. Yeah, that looks good. Kind of working my way around. Okay, I got this ball shape. Spheres are, if you're kind of new to coloring, spheres are a really good thing to practice. You've got, yeah, they're just great to practice. Spheres and cylinders, just rounded objects. Oh shoot, I messed up. I didn't mean to put the shadow there. Shouldn't be talking while I'm doing this. That's okay. Let's see if we can save it. Happy mistakes. All right, coming with that light color, using the chisel tip. And I'm going to try and push some of that ink that I just put down away. Going over in circles, moderate pressure. Moderate pressure. Working out some of these lines here. Alright, let's come in with, let's go back to this yellow that I was using before, my base color. And you know what, let's just do everything in this. Let's just go over everything. So right now I've got some lines from the previous marker, and I need to blend those out. Especially in the sphere. Oh yeah, those are blending out pretty well. Okay. As I do this, yes, I'm blending it all together, so we're getting rid of those lines, but we're also losing contrast because I'm bringing all the colors kind of together. So we're just, but you can still see some shadow. All right, let's go to the darkest marker, and let's get real brave. Now, this one does not have a brush tip. Okay, this is one of my thinner markers, and it doesn't have a brush tip, so I gotta use kind of the corner of the chisel. Yeah, this is a pretty dark color. So when I add the darkest color, I'm usually just doing like a light line into wet ink. Okay, I really want to be able to blur this into everything else. So very, very fine line, fine shadow, and then we're gonna try to pull some of that ink back into the rest of the drawing. Or into other parts of the object, I should say. Some shadow, shadow. I mean, I can even do. It's hard to just do a little bit of ink. Let's try that. Let's go to my second darkest color, which we had kind of touched before. Let's see if I can drag some of these, get rid of some of these dark lines from that previous color. I'm not doing the whole thing, just very lightly trying to work out those lines. Very, very lightly. And let's go back to Y2 and try to blur it all together. So this is my base color. Oh, so many layers just for something so simple as a wand. I'm careful not to see. I'm getting a little bit of blur right here. Right here, I'm getting a little bit of blur. So I've crossed over. I don't like that. But that's what happens when you put down too much ink. So I think I can't really recover from that mistake unless I make the whole thing darker, which I don't think I'm going to do. But you know what? If you look carefully at any work of art, if you look really carefully, you're gonna see things that are mistakes. This is my highlight color, that really bright yellow that we worked with initially. And I'm just revisiting it. I guess work out some light here. It's a little bit lighter. And so I just want a little bit more darkness right here. And then let's grab the blender. I'm gonna check my tip. My tip is green from before, so I'm just gonna try to wipe that off a little bit. And let's come in and let's just highlight some of the bright areas. Now the blender really only works on wet ink. It behaves differently from everything else, so you want to practice with the blender a little bit. Alright, that's good for the wand. Let's call it there. Okay, so now I think we're ready to do Link himself. As far as the progress so far, you know, I'm pretty happy with it. I think these bushes are a little bit light, and I think these vines and leaves are a little bit yellowish. So I might come back later and make them more greenish, just kind of go over them with a green similar to these top leaves. But I'm going to do that at the very end because there's no, like, if I'm going to do it now or I'm going to do it later, I'd like to have Link done, and that'll just give me a better idea of what it looks like. And then we can always come back and make changes later. So right now, I made this palette right here. I'm going to do the sleeves and the leggings and this belt right here. So grab this burnt orange color, and that will be my leather belt. Okay. And then I'm gonna go over this with like a warm gray because I think it sticks out a little bit too much. Okay, that's a good belt color. Not really adding much shadow to this one. I'll put a little bit of shadow here. But that's really all you need. For something that small, that's all you really need. Is you can just do a two-tone. And same thing with this belt buckle. I'm going to start with my lightest gray, my light gray right here. And always just starting light. I can always go darker. That's pretty good. And adding some shadow now. Coming back, blend it in a little bit more. Being careful not to add too much ink because it'll blur into that belt that I just did, or blur into the tunic. You know what? I want a little bit more contrast, so I'm gonna grab. Oh, let's just randomly grab this one. And I'm grabbing a darker color. I didn't really check it. I have an idea. I'm familiar with most of my markers pretty well. Well, this one is quite a bit darker, but that's okay. We're gonna come back and blur it in. Going back to that lightest color and just trying to grab and blur it a little bit. Shoot, you know what? See, I'm rushing it because I'm on camera. And now I've added too much ink and it's starting to blur. And it doesn't look good. So let's come in with the highlight color, the blender, and let's just blend it all together. And I still have a little bit of green on there. Oh my gosh, I have ruined this belt buckle like no other. Oh, save me. Happy mistakes. Happy mistakes. Okay, that. You know, I'm gonna let this ink dry. If I'm gonna change this color, I'm gonna let the ink dry because right now it's blurring. So I'm gonna come back and revisit this maybe. Set my grays to the side. I don't need this orange color anymore. Now let's do the sleeves. So for the sleeves, I'm gonna choose the second color will be my base. Tell you what, I'm gonna organize this in order of color. So I'm gonna go lightest will be the third one, then the second one, then the first one, and then the last one. So let's work these. This will be my highlight color. So, and these markers are all the thin ones. So I only have the broad, the chisel tip to work with, which makes it a little bit harder for blending. You have to do more passes with it because it doesn't have as much ink come out. Let's do the laces as well. Fair amount of ink. These are my highlight colors. So the lightest color you want to add more ink of because it's just going to be dominated by the darker colors. But these colors aren't that much darker. So I think we'll be good. Let's go to the second one. And with the second one, I'm going to cover everything. Now when choosing these colors, yeah, I want kind of like a grayish, lightish color. But I selected my palette before everything, and it's gonna be kind of a darker color, and it's gonna make the green of the tunic pop. You know, I really want that tunic to pop a lot. Come in here. Okay. Alright, that's a good start. Let's go to the next darkest marker. And let's start working so when I start working my darker markers, I'm going to work in the darker areas first, and then move my way towards the light areas. And the shadows will slowly start to form. But like I said, we're kind of molding this thing together. We're not going for the Hail Mary. We're not trying to accomplish it all at once. We're just gradually adding shadows, gradually making it a little bit darker. It's gradually working towards the finish line. And with each pass, we're adding wet ink, and wet ink is good. It just helps us blur everything together a little bit later. And it makes those dark colors a little bit more forgiving if you mess up. And then let's come to the darkest one here. Again, I always just start with the darkest area. So I think right underneath his tunic is going to be kind of the darkest area. And I also have these warm grays to work with because I realize that this might not be dark enough. Grays are great for adding shadow and stuff, but sometimes I don't like to rely on them for shading. If I can, I'm going to use existing colors. Or, just like normal colors. And, so this looks pretty good. But, yeah, I think that looks pretty good. I'm just going to grab a warm gray 4. And let's add it to, like, right underneath here. Let's see if it makes a difference. Now, for these grays, I actually use Copic markers. I think they just have a better gray selection. They have got a good gradient. Like, look how nice this gradient is for the Copic markers. Whereas this is the Ohuhu gray markers, and they just don't have a nice fade, whereas these ones do. I guess there's benefits to both, but just getting more shadow here. Yeah, I think these warm grays complement these colors pretty well. They don't always complement, but the warm grays work pretty well with brownish colors. Yeah, maybe a touch. And I'm gonna go here, warm gray 2, warm gray 2. Bring this up, and then let's just, I'm gonna go with my darkest one that I selected, and let's add this into the darkest areas of the drawing to start. Then we'll take a step back, we'll see what it looks like, and see if we want to add more or not. Might have to blur this, might have to fade this a little bit. But yeah, I'm really adding shadows, just even like the tiniest bit. Just brings it to life. It really does. These darks are just so important, but you gotta get them right. Really gotta take a little bit more time. All right, let's come to this. All right, this is one step below that previous marker I just did. Try to get rid of some of these lines a little bit. Now, sometimes you want a line, like if it's this tunic and it's casting a shadow, yeah, that might leave a line, or like a line with a very fine fade, like it's going to fade quickly in a very short distance. That looks pretty good. Maybe a little bit here. Oh, that was too much. That was too much. Warm gray 3. Happy mistakes. Happy mistakes. And now let's come back with. I'm going to come back with my shell white, which was that highlight color that I did. And I'm just going to go over the light areas again, just briefly. Just the blending is pretty good right now, so I don't need to go crazy. Paper's fairly wet. So this just kind of brings everything together again. Oh, I completely forgot about his cross section right there. So let's go ahead and, oh, this won't get too much shadow, but let's add the tiniest bit of this darker color on the bottom half. Shadow here, and then let's just grab one of those middle colors. Just kind of blur it together. Man, that looks pretty flat. All right, let's grab the highlighter, which still has a little bit of green on it, and come in here and highlight certain areas. A little bit right here, a little bit right here. I'm telling you, this blender marker is so good. And they only give you one. Like, you buy like a 320 piece set, and they give you one of these. It's like, I need like 5 of these. I use this a lot, especially because you kind of mix in different colors, and it's nice to have one that's like strictly greens, and one that's strictly blues and yellows. So you can see it kind of makes it spotty a little bit, and I don't know why the blender marker does this. But now I'm coming back in with that shell white, which was the first color that I did, the highlight color, and just gonna go back over what I just did. Because sometimes that highlighter makes it too light. Alright, that is good. If I put down any more, I mean, it's very wet right now. I think that looks pretty good. So I'm gonna call that good for the sleeves and for the belt, or maybe the belt. You know, let's come back to that belt. All right, so here I had grabbed C7. I'm gonna go with C5, and C6, and I'm just gonna make the whole thing darker. So this ink is dry. I'm really not happy with the final result, so we're gonna just go ahead and make the whole thing this darker gray. Okay, so that's C5. Now I'm going to go with C7, kind of jumping C6 here. And we'll just add fine shadow here. And then come back to C5 and see if I can blur it. All right, that's pretty good. Okay, let's call it good for the belt and the undergarments. Okay, now it's time to do the boots. The boots are going to be this palette right here. I've got 7 different markers. Now the key thing is the contrast. So how dark do I want to go with these boots? I want to make sure that they're lighter than this dirt right here. And I certainly don't want it to be the same color as the dirt. So I'm going to start with my lightest one, my highlight color. Now the highlight color, I mean, like, I'm not even doing the whole thing. I'm just going over, it's kind of a tool to just kind of, I mean, I'm getting the paper wet, and just, it helps give definition, it helps give like a 3-dimension to this thing. Like, it helps me kind of see where the highlights and the shadows are going to be. So I'm just starting with the brightest areas, at least what I think are going to be the kind of the brightest areas. Okay, come back in here. Apply ink where I think it's going to be lightest. That's good. Okay, let's go with the next brown. And this one, I think I'm actually just going to do the entire boot from top to bottom. And we'll see what this looks like. So I'm just going to cover in everything, including over that highlight area I just did. It's going to be a thin layer. I'm not going to saturate it. And if you ever think you actually have too much ink down, you can actually just step away for a little bit and let it dry, or maybe work on a different section. That can happen sometimes if you're working on smaller areas. Like when I was doing this belt, I kept going over and over and over, and I didn't give it any time to dry. And that's actually a mistake that I made. You can kind of see how it's blurring into the tunic, and I can't really, there's not too much I'm going to be able to do about that because it's a darker color. If the tunic were a really dark green, I wouldn't be too worried about it. I'm not too worried because it's not blurring that much, but still, it's like dead square in the center of the picture. You know, that is a mistake, and you probably won't notice it too much when the whole thing is done, because I mean, realistically, when people look at these things, they're only going to look at them for a few seconds, probably. And the attention is going to be mostly on Link and his face. So the skin is really important. So I kind of usually save the skin for last. I save the more important things for last. The stuff that's going to get more attention, I save for last. And that's because I want the background. I want to know what surrounding colors are going to look like. All right, let's grab this next darkest marker. So now I'm going a step darker. So I'm going to start in the darkest area and work my way to the lighter areas. And this might not even be dark enough. I don't know. But what we'll do is come over here. It's just a light layer. Something like this, something like that. Oh. Something like this. And we'll come back in and blend it with that brown we just used a moment ago. Okay. And I might come back and hit some of those highlight areas again. We'll see. Go underneath. So there's a shadow. Cast a shadow underneath the top of the boot. That looks pretty good, I would say. Alright, let's come back in with that previous brown and just blur it all together. These two browns are pretty similar in color, so it doesn't require a lot of blending. But still, there is a little bit of a line. And when in doubt, just adding a little bit more ink. Alright, let's go to my darkest brown. So I'm thinking, well, it's not my darkest brown, but the darker brown. Let's come to a dark area. And you know what, I'm going to do the whole bottom of the boot. It's going to be kind of a different, like a sole. It's going to be a darker color. Or at least we'll just add that for now. And now I'm just kind of going back over some of those dark spots that I chose earlier. Nice shadow underneath here. Really dark in the... See, I kind of want to try to match this color. See how much difference there is between this and this leg? Between this and this? I kind of want to try to match that same difference, but using these browns for the boots. And that, I think, is a big challenge. So I'm referencing stuff that already exists in the drawing to help me establish, oh, do I have enough contrast? Do I have enough of this? Do I have enough of that? Is it bright enough? Is it dark enough? That's really why I like to do some of those the background colors earlier. Alright, let's go back. So that's obviously a very big difference. So let's go with the third brown, and let's try to blend in this line a little bit. But the ink is pretty wet, so I've already done, I don't know, 4 passes, something like that. So the ink is pretty wet. Just kind of blending this circle motion. Get rid of that line. And the ink is drying. It doesn't dry too fast. You know, I've never set up a timer. That's something I should probably do, is like set up a timer and just see how long it actually takes to dry. I'd be kind of curious. Alright, let's go with the lightest color, that light brown. Blend it all together, like so. Just everything. Why not? Bring it all together. Not really changing the color too much, just blending. Alright, let's see what this looks like. Okay, so I think I need more shadow behind his leg right here. I think it's going to cast a shadow up that way. Same thing over here. A little bit darker. A little darker underneath here in the back. The So I still have another darker brown, but still working my way up towards it. Not quite ready for it yet. But boy, oh, I can feel how wet that ink is. I love it. All right, now let's come in with the highlight color. And we're going to use the broad end. Try to work out that line a little bit. And let's just line up certain areas of this. So I'm pushing the ink now. I'm using the broad tip to kind of push that ink away. And it's okay if I go too light, because like I said, we can always go darker. See, now I'm really getting some shadows here. Making those darks pop a little bit, making the brights, just everything pops more. And there's more variance in the color, just things just pop more. It's good, it's not great. Good, but not great. It's not bad. It's not bad. Do I want to add more? You know what? Tell you what. I'm going to grab my darkest marker and we're going to at least do some shading underneath the soles of his boot. Make those soles appear a little bit darker. And maybe like in the really dark sections, adding a shadow underneath the top of the boot. Yeah, I think bringing this color in is a good idea. But now, do I have too much contrast? That's the question. Are the shadows too dark? You know, let's try this YR10. This one has a little bit more, like a little bit of a reddish tint to it. And let's try. You know, sometimes if like you can't quite capture the shadows with the tone of the marker, sometimes you can kind of throw in a different color. So this one's got like a little bit of a red tint to it, not much. And since I'm applying it to wet ink, it's basically just going to blend in with that. So you're not going to see like a huge like red jump, but it will give a little bit of life to it. That's pretty good. Come back on with my my light brown. Go one more time. And right now the paper is very, very wet, so I should let this dry. If I'm going to do any more changes, I really should let it dry. But you know what? I think I'm actually pretty satisfied with how this looks right now. Is it perfect? No. Is it good? Yeah, I'd say so. You know, you have to be your own worst critic. Oh, that paper is so wet. The paper is going to start to warp. You can see this paper is not flat anymore. Alright, it's warping a little bit. But those boots look pretty good. It's a different color from the dirt, which is really nice. So I think it pops out pretty well. It goes pretty well with the bushes and the vines. So we'll call it good on the boots. Okay, let's get going with the hair. So what we have left is the hair, the skin, and the tunic. I'm going to knock out the hair right now. Now, Link is kind of a blondish color, so I'm going to go with, I'm going to start with this first color, this lightest one, and I'm just going to get everything wet with this. I think my highlight color, actually, you know what, let's do the highlight color. I think it's going to be like this bright yellow, and let me just go over some bright spots right here. Just work that. Yeah, I think this will be a good highlight color. Blonde hair is always kind of tough. I mean, like anytime you're drawing in like a lighter color, it's just less forgiving, and it's hard to get really bright. Kind of like the brightest markers that you have are still they start at level 3 out of 10 on the darkness scale. So it's hard to, if you're going to draw something at like a 1 or a 2, that's very difficult to do. Because you kind of have to work the white of the paper in, or maybe you have to use the blender marker a bunch. I don't know. It's difficult. It's always easier to go darker. Darker colors are just easier to work with. But we'll make do. We'll keep this pretty light. Yeah. So now I'm going in with that first color right here, and yeah, his hair has a bit of yellow to it, so I might add a little bit more yellow on this next pass. You know what? I'm gonna grab a brighter yellow. So let's go with Y040. Have I used that one yet? What else do I have? Y040. I haven't used that one yet. Let's use that one. Okay, here it is. And let's go over everything. Now you notice, if you look carefully, the tip of this thing is actually a little bit green from me using it earlier. But what's nice is it doesn't, even though I went through a green tip earlier, I'm not really seeing the green here. And that's what I really like about these markers, is you can just kind of blend everything together. If you have like those cheap Crayola ones, and you go like a yellow through like a blue, I mean your yellow turns into a green forever. It's just ruins it completely. Oh yeah, that's a good color for his hair. Oh, I forgot about his little sideburn things. I think that's part of his hair. I gotta go over with that original color. You can see the color differences a little bit, so come back through with that original color, hit the highlight color. And you know what? Let's hit these highlights again. That's a pretty good base color. I don't have much in terms of shadows going on, but it's a good start. All right, let's start adding some shadows. I'm gonna go with, tell you what, I'm gonna go with this 5th color, which is kind of dark, and I'm just gonna work some of the shadows in already. Try to give this thing a little bit more depth, and then I can kind of work off that, because right now I'm having trouble kind of visualizing what this hair is actually looking like. So we're just gonna add some of this, and then we'll immediately go over it with a lighter yellow. Boy. I don't know. Alright, that's good. I'm gonna grab this one and kind of try to work some of this up a little bit into what I had previously had. Try to work it up. Okay. Oh boy, guys. I don't know. Maybe I should just give up coloring forever. I'm constantly, like, I'm just trying to do the same thing over and over. I'm just being consistent, at least. Okay? Like, maybe it's not going to be perfect, but it's going to be consistent. Let's go over with Y3. I think Y3 is this one. You know what? Actually, let's go with the original color. Let's just try blending everything together a little bit. Ah, we're getting wet. It might actually be too wet at this point. So you gotta be careful when you're working in a small area. You're working faster than the ink can dry, so sometimes wet ink isn't always your friend. Alright, let's throw in some of this brownish color. Oh yeah. That's what I'm talking about. maybe the back of his head gets a little bit more shade, so maybe there's not even highlights there at all. I think this brown goes pretty well with this. Bring these guys together. A little dark on the upper edge. Okay. Now let's grab my darkest color and let's do like a thin. Let's really hit those shadows. Oh yeah, that looks pretty good. Good, not great. Maybe some lines. You kind of see some lines in here sometime. And then let's go back in with that super bright yellow. I might have screwed this up. I don't know. See, I start to panic, and I don't realize how much ink I'm putting down. And when I do that, you know, I'm kind of making it worse because sometimes you don't want to blur it together so much. That looks awful. Let's grab the highlighter marker. Clean it off a little bit because it's blue at the moment. Or greenish blue. And let's just hit some of the highlights areas. This thing can sometimes just save the day completely. My blender marker. It really is a good tool. I wish they would give you more than 1% because you end up just going through it right away. Oh yeah, that ink is wet. Let's see if we flip it over. Yeah, we can see how much ink I've actually put down. Oh, that looks kind of cool. All right, that's good for that. Let's go with the dark color again. And oh shoot, you know what? Oh my god, it's bleeding into the eyeball. I've put down so much that it's actually bleeding. Okay, I really ought to set down the marker now. Maybe just one more pass. Yeah, I'm bleeding into the skin. Shoot. Alright, I'm going to call the hair good there. I'm not super satisfied, but I bled into the skin. I put down too much ink. Got a little carried away. That's okay. It might, I mean, it doesn't look bad. Not amazing, but it's not bad. As you go through this process, you'll learn that you're going to make mistakes. Sometimes you can save it, sometimes you can't. Let's do the eyes real quick. Just grab these two greens. Bluish green. I grabbed two markers. I'm just going to use one. We can keep that flat. Alright, skins. Actually, yeah, let's do skins. Why not? Alright, this one, I'm just not even going to do a palette. I pretty much know these colors pretty well. I almost always start with R18. It's just been a good skin color for me overall. Be wary of the eyes. Oh, I forgot to do his eyebrows. Shoot, where did I just put those? Okay, let's do this marker for the eyebrows. Even though it's already bled into the eyebrows. That's okay. So we're going to go up into this bleeding area. I don't think I'm going to be able to save that very much. So just using R18. get the face and the hands and the ear. Don't forget the ear. So let's see if I learned my lesson about working in small areas and applying too much ink. I know I talk about wet paper all the time, which is great. Now the thickness of this paper, I think this is around 60-pound paper. I've actually had this paper lying around for a while, so I don't have the original packaging. I'm guessing it's around 60 pound. I don't suggest using printer paper, which is 20 pound. It's too thin. You want something a little bit thicker. Let's see, let's make his cheeks area kind of blushy. I don't know, maybe there's a little bit of this. I'm basically just kind of like, all these colors are fairly similar. This is kind of like a highlight color, a little bit. Maybe on his chin a touch. Okay. And what I can always do is just come to a spot that I know is going to be dark. Normally I would come underneath the hair, but I've already kind of messed that area up. Let's add some more blush. Yeah, a touch here, a touch there. Did I completely miss his hands? This part of his hands? I think I did. Okay. Alright, let's start working on slightly darker colors. Let's go with warm grade 1. Warm grade 1 is similar to R18. But now I'm just going to kind of work the shadows into the light areas. So I have my base down. It's really easy to oversaturate the paper when you're doing skin. Gotta be careful. Alright. I'm gonna jump into, let's try this one. Oh, that one's way too dark. Who am I kidding? Let's try this one. Yeah. Okay, so let's come underneath the hair. See if we can turn this back into a shadow instead of the hair color. Add a little shadow there. Gotta be careful around the eyes, because if the ink bleeds into the eyes, there's just no saving it. Which I have already done, and I can't save it. It makes me sad. Let's put a little blur by his nose. Underneath his cheek a little bit. The back of his hands. I hope I grabbed the right color. I've used this color before, and I can usually blend it out, and then it ends up looking pretty good. Jeez. I don't want to use too much of it. So I'm going to come in and... Okay, I'm going to try to grab slightly lighter color so it kind of goes with that. Okay, let's try this one. And I'm going to just kind of blur everything I just did. Go underneath the eye. Adding shadows coming from the dark spot, working to the light. A little bit there, a little bit here. See, now I'm starting to kind of get away from that original skin color, so I might come back in with that. I think I am going to. If I do any more ink, I might oversaturate it again. So I'm coming with the original light skin color. I'm going to try and lighten it up a little bit, and then just kind of blur everything together. Oh, I'm starting to get mud, aren't I? It's okay. I can save mud. Mud isn't always bad. Alright, let's put some highlights here. And let's come back to that R20, which is kind of that blush color. Let's give him those blushes again. That looks pretty good. And let's hit it with the highlighter. So I think he's gonna have some highlight here in his face, maybe around here, basically where those cheeks are. That's part of his thumb, that's part of his hand, fingers. Yeah, I blend to the eye a little bit. Okay, I can live with this. I'm not the best at skin. Skin is really tough. Yeah, it's just something about it. It's because it's kind of light. If you're doing like a darker skin, it's easier because darker colors are always a little bit easier to work with. But this is pretty good, and you can probably see how much. Yeah, it's pretty wet. So if I add any more ink, it's just gonna, instead of coming through the paper, it's gonna go through the side into the eyeballs and things like that. All right, put this away, and let's finish up with the tunic. All right, lastly, let's finish up with the tunic. I've selected my markers here. I want these greens right here it might be a little bit too dark, but they might be good for like a touch of shadow. But you know, I've got my background here, and I want to stay lighter than my background. So I'm going to try and make the darkest color that I see, maybe this one right here. But I'm going to start with my highlights per usual. I'm going to actually set these three markers, these three dark ones to the side. Try to remind myself to avoid those. But let's start with acid green. A good highlighting marker. So I'm just going to go over some spots that I think will get a little bit more light. And just saturating the paper. Just getting these areas just wet. Maybe a part of the shoulder right here. And a tiny bit on this shoulder. And maybe the touch of the collar. Back of the hat. And we're going to be going over all this anyway. Okay, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. Maybe a touch right here. Okay, let's grab my next marker, and let's just actually just do the entire thing. So maybe I'll avoid the highlight area. Just kind of make it wet. I'll come back with the highlighter. Tell you what, I'll avoid those highlight areas, and then I'll come back and try to blend in this marker into those areas. See if I can at least. But you know, we're still on the light side of things, so you know, now is a good time to experiment. If I'm gonna make a mistake, it's easy to correct at this point. Very easy to correct. Sometimes you want to just kind of take a step back, like literally take a step back from your drawing and see what it looks like from a distance. See what really sticks out and what doesn't, because you might get caught up on some really small detail that no one's ever going to notice. But you might also gloss over something that is important that sticks out. Still just getting things wet. Everything is dry because we got blank paper. It doesn't have to be a super thick layer at this point. We're just thin layer across the entire thing. I don't ever really want to just like glob it all down in one spot and then glob it down in another spot. I kind of want to like glob it down on the whole thing and then kind of work the entire thing at once if I can. All right, let's go back to my original color and let's just see if we can kind of blur this together. And we'll see. I mean, it might not. Might look alright. These lighter colors you end up pushing a lot harder. So the felt tips end up getting like kind of smushed. So sometimes with the lighter markers I'll use this chisel tip just to preserve the brush tip. But right now I'm still just using the brush tip. I don't know. I've got backup markers, so I got a few sets. I really enjoy this hobby. It's fun. It's very affordable too. I mean, you buy a big set of 320 markers for $200. It'll last you an entire year. Unless you go through the light colors right away like I do. Okay, that's pretty good. Let's work in the next darkest color. I think it's still a little bit too bright, so I'm working on a darker color. I'm not really sure what it's going to look like, so I'm going to apply it to one of the spots I think is going to be darkest in the entire thing, which will be right here. And then, you know what? I don't think that's a highlight area. I think it kind of curves up like this. So I'm still adding depth to my own drawing. And as you lightly add these shadows, things start to kind of stick out a little bit more and more for you. And it just kind of comes together. That's why we kind of start light and just build up those shadows. We're not going straight for the Hail Mary, like I've said. A little shadow behind the hand. A little shadow behind this bulb. Shadow underneath the string. Maybe right here. Underneath that. Let's go underneath the sleeve. That's definitely going to be dark underneath the sleeve. And on the back side. Top of the shoulder. Underneath the ear is going to be a dark spot. Underneath the collar will be a dark spot. So just slowly working in these fades. Add a little shadow behind this brim of his hat. Come on. All right. And finally, just work the tip of the hat. And maybe over here. Underneath this chin. That looks pretty good. You know, I think I can actually use a little bit more shadow. So let's try this next green. Again, going to the darker spot. Let's see if this really adds anything. Okay, it does a little bit, not much. I'll work it a little bit. I'll probably jump to a darker green after this, like right after this. So I don't, you know, this green isn't really making much of a difference now, is it? No, not really. It's supposed to be a little bit darker, but it's barely noticeable. Alright, let's try this next darker marker. Is this making a difference? A little bit. Into these wet areas. Okay. Put that in. So a really dark spot will be the back of the hat, like right where my marker is. So it's always safe to add ink there. Come to the bottom of the hat. Okay, I like the look of that so far. Let's see this. Okay, now let's experiment with this color. See if I can make a difference here. What happens if I go like that? That's actually pretty nice. Nah, I think that's a little too little too dark for these highlight areas. Maybe I'll kind of like transition some of these darker areas, try to kind of blend it in with this green into the highlight areas. And because this green doesn't quite match the other ones, it's a little bit different. But a little bit different sometimes is a good thing, because we want to kind of work different colors in. Just a little bit of this color. And then let's grab my darkest marker. I think this is the darkest one I'm going to go with here. Add in some more shadows. Really just hitting the darkest spots. Not too much. Little really goes a long way, so. Underneath the hat will be nice and dark. Yeah, if I go any darker than this, it's going to start mixing with the background, and I don't want that. Sleeve, underneath the sleeve. Alright, let's come back in with my highlight color. Why not? And let's just start to blend things. I'm just going to kind of blend the highlight area right now. Maybe not the entire thing. But it's been a while since I've hit the highlight area, so it might have started to dry on me a little bit. So at the very least, I'm just keeping it wet. Just blending it all. Some lines here still. And it's okay. I don't think I captured it right. There's just something off about it, but whatever. Let's see what I can do. There's just something off about it. Maybe a darker green right here. I realized I forgot to shade his ear. Fortunately, I keep my markers close. Let's just do this real quick. It's a pretty simple ear. We'll go over it again with that R18. Throw in some R20. Or some shadow. That's it. That's all I'm going to do. See? Keep your markers close. Don't put them away until the entire drawing's done. Alright, I think that's going to be good for this one. I don't think there's much more I can do with it. Sure, it's not perfect, but you know, it's not bad either. And I think it looks, at a glimpse, it looks pretty good. So we'll call this one good. So thank you for watching, if you made it this far, which I doubt you did. But let me know what you think in the comment section below. If you have any suggestions on how to make my channel a little bit better, I would appreciate that. Trying to make the videos shorter and more enjoyable to watch, because I realized that, you know, this took me probably 2 or 3 hours to do. And yeah, so just let me know. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next episode.